Wow, what an incredible story. Must have seen that film hundreds of times, but that story is a piece of Americana. Hi, I'm Travis Mitchell, Senior Vice President and Chief Content Officer for Maryland Public Television, and I happen to have been one of the executive producers of Shaw Rising. You see, I was born on the campus of Shaw University. I was reared on that campus. My father was a graduate. He was a all conference basketball player and later a very young basketball coach there. My aunt worked in administration. My uncle was on the board of trustees, and my mother was a graduate there. I could not have imagined a better place to grow up. It indeed was my Wakanda before Black Panther. And so I am just pleased that you had an opportunity to witness a great piece of filmmaking. I am thrilled to be joined by one of my most favorite people in the world, the president of Shaw University, Dr. Paulette Dillard, the 18th president of Shaw U. Dr. Dillard, thank you for joining us tonight. And I want to thank all of you for tuning in and joining us for a conversation for change as we engage in this very important discussion about HBCUs. Welcome, Dr. Dillard.
Thank you, Travis. It is such a privilege to be here. And so great to see you. We miss you in North Carolina, but glad for this opportunity to further share the Shaw story.
Well, I understand that before we get into our discussion, I understand that this is a very special day, a very special occasion for Shaw University. You want to share what it is for us?
Actually, Shaw University is celebrating its 155th birthday.
Wow.
And that is an amazing accomplishment when you think about 1865, as was depicted in the documentary, you know, the end of the fall of the Confederacy, and then out comes, you know, this institution, and 155 years later, it is still on mission. And so we are so excited to share our story and to have more people know the Shaw story, because we believe it is an incredible story.
And as you're saying that, you know, I think of a mix of several hymns, you know, from the civil rights era. We've come this far by faith, but we ain't gonna let nobody turn us around. You know, Shaw is so emblematic of the resilience in our people. But before we get into a little bit more about Shaw, let's talk a little bit about your academic journey. You are a native of North Carolina. You are a three-time HBCU graduate. So what can you tell us about your educational journey and how your HBCU experiences shaped your life?
I'll do that. But before I do that, Travis, I do want to thank the A.J. Fletcher Foundation, you, Hal Goodtree, and all of those responsible for making Shaw Rising happen. And before I tell my story, I just have to acknowledge publicly the great support that we received in order to make Shaw Rising a reality. For a period there, it was just a dream and a desire. And so I want to acknowledge all the support we received to make it happen.
Well, thank you so much.
My journey is much like the students that attend most HBCUs. I am a first generation college student, the first in my family to get a college degree. And so I came out of rural North Carolina. And the only thing I knew about college was that my teachers said, you need to go to college. And so, you know, I was excited to have that opportunity, but was not necessarily very well prepared for what college would be like, having not had anyone in the family to steer through that journey.
Mm-hmm.
Now, education has always been important in my household. You know, my mother and father were keen that you will go to school, you will do your homework, and you will graduate from high school, and you will continue because an education, like in most Black households, was the key. Even in the year that I graduated, not just 155 years ago. And so I began my journey at Barbara Scotia College in Concord, North Carolina. It is one of the HBCUs that has not survived, but its graduates have survived and gone on to make a difference in the nation and in the lives of other folks. And so my experience at Barbara Scotia was just so enriching, that, I wanted more. And so graduating from Barbara Scotia with a degree in biological sciences, I trained to become a medical technologist, worked in diagnostic medicine. I always wanted to be a scientist. And from there, I was able to get a master's from Tennessee State University, and went on to work in diagnostic medicine and research for almost 25 years before completing my doctorate and returning to academia. So it's been a journey of curiosity, but I think the most striking thing about my journey has been the number of influencers and encouragers along the way. And I do not believe that I would have had that same opportunity had I been a number at, a PWI, because not only was I taught content, I was taught, how to be confident and how to believe that, you could achieve. All you had to do was have the determination and have some folks in your corner. And, I can name a lot of folks. I can remember my freshman convocation. I can remember that speech that Mabel Parker McLean made, and to this day. And so I give all the accolades to, my 3-time HBCU experience, because all along the way, I've always been told you can do it. You have everything you need. We've prepared you. Now go do it. And I didn't think anything else. And so, so I was able to really have, an incredible career, incredible opportunities, because so many people believed in me, in each of those HBCUs.
That's incredible. Before we move on, Dr. Dillard, to another question, let's unpack a few things that you said. And I want to encourage those who have joined us or who are with us online to go ahead and send the questions in by chat, because we want to hear from you and we want to give you a chance to speak with one of America's greatest education leaders and pick her brain and ask her some direct questions. But Dr. Dillard, you mentioned of your 3-time HBCU experience. I talked to one of your students a couple of weeks ago. I heard an interview with one of your students, as a matter of fact, your SGA president, Mr. Finley. And he was saying that what he thought was special about Shaw, he mentioned you. He talked about being on campus and having the president walk up and have a conversation with you, and really very encouraging and very nurturing. So do you think that the secret sauce of HBCUs is that nurturing environment? You mentioned being more than a number, but can you talk about the importance of creating a nurturing environment and what that does to prepare student leaders?
Great question, Travis. One of the incredible things about HBCUs, is that you do know the individual student. And you know that you have a responsibility to the whole student. And so you can't deal with how they're performing in a course without dealing with the other things that are going on, with that student. And we have that opportunity on HBCU campuses. And it may sound strange to others, but you learn body language and you learn, a look, and you don't think twice about stopping someone and say, is everything okay? And, a lot of times, students are startled by that.
Yeah.
That someone stops and says, is everything okay?
Yeah. Somebody cares. Yeah.
Yeah. You want to talk about it?
Yeah.
Or I was walking across campus one day, and a student said to another student, that's the president, ask her. And the other student said, I can't ask the president. He said, yes, you can. You can ask Dr. Dillon. And so it's that kind of, stop and, take an interest that happens at HBCUs. And we speak a language that, sometimes, is different in that, I recognize what you're not saying.
Yes.
Yes. And I'm going to correct you if your grammar is not correct. I'm going to correct you if what you're telling me is not factual. But I'm going to do it after I find out what exactly is your issue, because I want to deal with that first. And then I have an opportunity to teach. And I think that's the secret sauce. Deal with my me issue. Then I'm granted the opportunity to teach you. And I can't teach you if I can't relate, to you. And I think that's the HBCU secret sauce. I can relate to you. Now I can help you learn.
Wow. So you affirm, confirm, and create a safe space to challenge. That is fantastic. That is fantastic. We just watched a whole hour about Shaw's 150 years at that time, a little bit more. And it ends with your inauguration as the 18th president. So we know what the past looks like. Now you've been at Shaw as the official president beyond your interim period now for a little over 18 months. Is that correct?
Actually, I've been 2 years.
2 years. Okay.
2 years because my inauguration came months after
the announcement. Yes. I'm sorry about that, but
that's okay.
So 2 years. And so we've seen the past and we got a glimpse in the film. You had just been inaugurated. We heard from you. What does the future look like? What's your vision for Shaw for the future?
Oh, wow. I hope you've got a lot of time because I have a big vision for Shaw, building on its incredible past. And that is Shaw sits in vibrant downtown Raleigh, North Carolina, one of the fastest growing regions in the nation. It boasts the Research Triangle Park. It boasts technology companies. It boasts the largest research one university, in the nation, in NC State. And so Shaw is sitting in a city that is growing by leaps and bounds, and investment is coming, left and right. But there's one aspect of Raleigh that has not achieved at the level of its many other accolades, and that is diversity and inclusion. And so in in Raleigh, North Carolina, there is the need for this treasure called Shaw University. And that is to partner with these incredible companies to be the pipeline of students so that the president of Wells Fargo or never has to say, I can't find Black talent. It's not that I can't hire them, I can't find them. So my vision for Shaw is I'm going to remove that excuse from any organization that wants to have diverse talent, because we're going to invite them into Shaw, help us develop the curriculum, train the students to be what you say you need, because they're able, they're capable, and we can train them. We've been doing it for 155 years. Yes. So now we're saying we're ready to partner with you. Yes. You know, we have the secret sauce that provides you what you need to get to that equity, inclusion metrics that you speak about, wanting to move that needle. And I'm happy to report that the city of Raleigh has been very receptive. And we're beginning to see how Shaw becomes an integral part of the city today in 2020 and beyond, not as part of its heritage trail, because for quite a while it was, you know, you can go over and see the beautiful buildings from 1873, 5 of which are on the National Registry of Historic Places. Well, that's our past. Yes. Our future is you can sit in historic Estee Hall, look out across the Raleigh skyline and see Red Hat, and see First National Bank, and see Wells Fargo. And, you know, you see the growth of the next Central Park in what's happening with Dix Park. And so you can't grow Raleigh lest you come through Shaw. Right. And so our time has come to once again be an incredible contributor, you know, to the space in which we exist. And so we have been forging incredible partnerships, and we believe that Shaw can be and will be the answer to the diverse talent need that is in our area. And for those of you not familiar with it, North Carolina has a goal, My Future NC, that by 2030, we need at least 2 million adults ages 25 to 44 with a high quality credential or post-secondary degree. And at the rate that we are going now, we're going to be 400,000 plus individuals short of that goal. And the goal is going to be even greater for underrepresented populations. And so we believe that there is Shaw's new niche. Shaw, along with the other HBCUs in North Carolina, have an incredible role to play. And because Shaw sits in the capital city, we believe that we have found what is our path forward. So we are busy building the programs that we have aligned with the growth sectors in the city. And I am very optimistic about Shaw's future. Now, I'm not saying we don't have challenges. Right. Now, we haven't made it by any means. Right. But I certainly see a clear path forward for Shaw University.
So in your answer, I think it leads to my next question. What makes Shaw so special and unique? But before you answer that, I want to tie back to something you said in your comments here just now, and that is you made your value proposition is that the economy of Raleigh cannot, and North Carolina as a whole, cannot be competitive if it doesn't develop the human resources, the potential of the future labor force. And so if you don't
Absolutely.
have the skilled workers, we're now kind of going back to HBCUs being seen as, because of what HBCUs do so well, harvesting, meeting students where they are, which you mentioned, harvesting the leadership out of them and taking them to a whole nother level that they may not have thought was possible. And we have to keep in mind that it's a misnomer that HBCUs don't continue to attract the best and brightest students. You have the best and brightest, but you also have a mix of students who need an opportunity and some encouragement. So then, if you are helping provide an answer to a problem that the state has, and indeed HBCUs, that the problem that the nation has in developing the future workforce, then in your secret sauce you mentioned, what makes Shaw in this greater equation so unique?
What makes Shaw so unique is, if I were a real estate agent, it would make sense. Location, location,
Mm,
location.
mm-hmm,
You
mm-hmm,
know, I'm uniquely, located. I mean, my students can walk to these learning experiences. They can intern. They can hop on, transportation, nodes and go, wherever. Shaw is part of the Cooperating Raleigh Colleges consortium.
mm-hmm,
And so, so we've created kind of an environment where we get to expose others in our community to that secret sauce,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
in a way that doesn't seem to be combative, but more engaging.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
And we have a history that draws people to Shaw. And
mm-hmm.
if you're in North Carolina, you cannot go to any rural county and not know someone who graduated from Shaw, who is either the sheriff, the principal, or some government official, in the city. And so Shaw uniquely has locations outside of its main campus, located in other cities that give returning adults an opportunity to get a degree
Mm-hmm.
that they started many years ago, but wanted to remain in their communities. And so the footprint of Shaw makes it, somewhat unique. Shaw
Mm-hmm.
was doing adult education from satellite campuses long before
It became
it
popular.
existed
Yeah,
as a sector.
yeah.
And so, I just know that Shaw is special because it seems to always um, uh, uh, look out on the horizon and address a need that is immediate. And the issue that Shaw has, that many HBCUs have, is that we have been significantly under resourced.
Mm, mm,
And
mm,
so now we're looking at ways to address being under resourced. And
mm-hmm,
we're addressing it in terms of an investment.
mm,
That if the growing economy in Raleigh and city government invest in Shaw, we will give you the return in terms of the well educated, well trained workforce that tends to stay in North Carolina where, over 60% of our student population, happens to be North Carolinians.
Wow.
And so we believe that we're positioning ourselves as an investment that will pay in significant returns. And we want to be a partner to our growing city. Our city cannot grow south, unless it comes through, Shaw. So how might we partner, in expansion of our city boundaries by upgrading the infrastructure, et cetera, for Shaw. Shaw is very, very committed to the Southeast Raleigh community that has not seen the same kind of development as the city of Raleigh and North Hills, et cetera. So we're standing in the gap for that part of, our city as well, because we have the way of helping that voice be heard.
Yes.
And be able to bring all of our citizenry, into, the economic growth and development of the area. And we believe, don't want to sound boastful or anything. We believe that that is what Shaw's role is, what Shaw's calling is. And we are prepared to step into that space and lead through it. And that's one of the exciting things about having Shaw Rising aired during Maryland Public TV's celebration of HBCU Week, is that we believe that we can be a model for other HBCUs in terms of how do you partner with your city to be, a growth engine and a supporter, and not, I tell people all the time, I don't want to be a charity, or oh my goodness, poor Shaw. I want to be Shaw to be a partner in the growth engine of the city. And that requires investment, just like you invest in commercial development, you invest in Dix Park to be, an incredible park for the future. That's what we're asking for Shaw, and we believe that you will not be disappointed in what we will be able to deliver.
Let's put what you just said in the context of the $70 billion Biden-Harris plan for investment in HBCUs. Now, you just talked about the uniqueness of Shaw location, but also we see growth in cities. We've seen this in America, where there is a schism between the haves and the have-nots. You have Wall Street doing well, Main Street suffering. And then if you unpack that a little bit more, in urban and rural communities where HBCUs are in the heart of many times the quote unquote black side of town or the black community, we see development hasn't necessarily kept pace. So do you see the Biden-Harris $70 billion plan being a possible jumpstart of getting investment dollars from the federal government to HBCUs for infrastructure and hopefully further development? Is that what you're hoping for?
Certainly, we have high hopes for the $70 billion investment that is the promise of the Biden-Harris platform. And in that $70 billion includes doubling the Pell Grant, because many of our students, are Pell eligible, and they have low EFCs, and so their ability to go to college requires that they borrow money or work 2 or 3 jobs, and so doubling Pell. Being able to make funding available for infrastructure upgrades, because COVID showed us that when we went to the digital platform, many of our communities did not have the access to the technology to continue to have an education. So certainly the infrastructure piece of that is going to be important. For our research institutions, the investment in centers of excellence is going to be, amazing. But I think that in the plan that we're talking about for Shaw, we will certainly benefit from the 70 billion. And that's for HBCUs and minority serving institutions. Mm-hmm. And so that's, that 70 billion will be divided many ways. But I think that there are partnerships at the local level, that are what you say, on the ground things that we need to do with local, government as well. Mm-hmm. So happy about the 70 billion, mm-hmm. Definitely a good investment, mm-hmm. But, there are, developers here in Raleigh, and I'm sure in Charlotte and other cities, that we have to create the model of how you work with us across the, the public-private partnership, mm-hmm. Chasm. And I think it's very doable. Yes. And some schools have done it more successfully than others. The smaller schools, it's a heavier lift. But I believe that in any good investment, I'm going to put something in. I want something out. Right. We both benefit. And that's the model that Shaw is working towards. And our students benefit because what greater classroom is there than mm-hmm. actually applying your content in an area within walking distance, of where you go to school and where you live. And that's important because if college students work in low wage jobs not associated with the major or their subject area of interest, you work long hours for low wage because you need to supplement your income. Mm-hmm. But imagine if you could work fewer hours at an industry for which you are a contributor. Right. Then both win. Yes. And that's the model that Shaw believes that will work for Raleigh, for Southeast Raleigh, entrepreneurship and in our communities development. And so we want to work with our partners, to make this, a model that can be replicated across the country. And I think that, when we talk about the new normal and post-COVID, these are the kind of things that we're going to have to do to move our country forward. Right. After, such a devastating period, of the COVID-19 pandemic that's still not yet over.
So you talked about Shaw as a model, and I could go on and on asking you these questions, but I promised to get our audience in, and I can see they're chomping at the bit to ask you questions. So one of the first questions is about Morris Brown, and what could Morris Brown College in Atlanta take away from the turnaround at Shaw, or is it too late? And for our viewers who joined us, Morris Brown, I think it was 2003, lost accreditation. A historically Black college in Atlanta, plummeted to about 50 students. And as of late, I think they have a provisional reacceptance into SACS accreditation, I believe it is.
Actually, Travis, they are going with an alternative accreditation body called the TRACS.
Okay.
Yeah, the TRACS, and so their application has been accepted, as I understand, And so now they will undergo the process of seeking accreditation through TRAPS, which would permit their students to receive federal financial aid, which very few students that attend our schools can go to school without the benefit of access to federal aid. And so that's step number one.
Now, Morris Brown is nestled between Morehouse and Spelman and Clark Atlanta. What is it that they could borrow from the model that you laid out as they're trying to rebound? What can Morris Brown do to regain its footing in the city of Atlanta? What will be your recommendations?
Once again, my hands are full and my head is full trying to keep Shaw on its visionary track. But I believe that the Atlanta University Center model would, to include Morris Brown in that model, might be a pathway because those of us that have been continuously operating are challenged right now in this higher ed environment. And so many institutions are merging and finding their path forward in these kinds of partnerships and collaboration. And so it may be that a thoughtful way would be with some kind of engagement with the AU Center, as they began to rebuild on their pathway back. I never consider an HBCU down and out until it's down and out.
Right. Right.
So I certainly, take my hat off to them and anything that, we're one big happy family. So we like to see, each other, succeed. Yes. And so we certainly have that wish and desire for Morris Brown, but it's a tough road to hoe,
right.
As an HBCU, period. Right. And so that lift is pretty significant, but they're doing everything within their power to turn the situation around.
So there's another question here before we go to zone opportunities. I'm going to ask if we can go to the next question and come back to zone opportunities. Let's stick with this collaboration. You talked about a prescription for Morris Brown. So the question is, would a collaborative effort between Shaw, St. Augustine's, North Carolina Central Universities to raise funds and improve curriculum to create a higher demand for collaborative programs? What kind of collaborative things could happen between the three major HBCUs? And are there already collaborative efforts that we might not know about? I know that there's the business incubator in Southeast Raleigh. I think that was a collaboration between St. Augustine's and Shaw. Could you share with us what type of collaborations may be happening in the triangle between the HBCUs?
Yeah, that's a tough one because we St. Augustine's and Shaw, we're 5 miles apart. Mm-hmm. And so, this past year pre-COVID, we formed a partnership via an MOU for us to utilize their sports stadium. And so instead of, Shaw building facilities or going to Durham County Stadium to play football, et cetera, we partnered with St. Augustine's, to utilize their facility, when they're away, we're at home and vice versa. Mm-hmm. We are also, St. Augustine's and Shaw are part of a consortium called the Cooperating Raleigh Colleges. Mm-hmm. And that allows St. Augustine's and Shaw, along with William Peace and Meredith and NC State and Wake Technical Community College, to do cross-registration, where we don't, if we don't have but a few students in a class, and Meredith or St. Aug has, space in their class, my students can go there, but they register at their home campus. Mm-hmm. They are not charged by the other institution. And because we are physically so close together, that cooperative works very, very well. Mm-hmm. And it expands the offering beyond just the HBCU community. But it achieves very much a similar kind of, of opportunity for us. Now, when it comes to North Carolina Central, it's more we have articulation agreements where you can start at one school and finish at the other. And so we have those kinds of initiatives going on. But we don't yet have an AU center type model, that I'm not saying that sometime in the future that wouldn't make sense. But I think the Cooperating Raleigh Colleges model works very, very well for Raleigh because the proximity of the institutions are so close. Mm-hmm. And our students get the opportunity to experience all of these campus environments and resources that we would not be able to afford, on an individual basis. Mm-hmm. And a student at NC State, or, Meredith or one of the other schools could have the HBCU experience right. to some extent, yes. By virtue of the fact that we do have this model. And I think it is probably one of the most successful consortiums of that nature that exist anywhere in the nation. And so far that has worked well. And we're always looking for ways that we can collaborate more so. But sometimes you have to look at what is the focus and the mission and the strengths of each of the programs as you try to decide, how do you build these collaborations. But we are open. St. Augustine's and Shaw talk all the time about some of our front office functions, some of those things that could easily be done, at one of the other places. And then we focus our resources on those things that are unique, to our campuses. But we're having those discussions. And if the opportunity presents itself, I would certainly say from Shaw's perspective, we are open.
So I'm going to try to move us along on a couple of rapid fire questions to make sure that your audience doesn't feel disappointed that their questions were not asked. So I'm going to follow this up with a question about you seeing Shaw as a multicultural school. And I think the question on the multicultural school situation is that people may not know when they hear historically Black college, what that really means. And I know you have a lot of international students, and just because your skin color may be Black does not mean that people identify as African American. So could you explain the multiculturalism that Shaw actually has for our audience?
Shaw has always been multicultural. And Shaw probably has had, a uniquely diversified, campus. Mm-hmm. And in fact, that's one of our strategic priorities is to make sure that our campus reflects more of the environment in which our students will be exposed to. And so we have international students. So we introduce men and women soccer teams, mm-hmm. To our sports lineup, so mm-hmm. that we could expand the number of students that attend Shaw that would prefer to play soccer. And yes. So we attracted a larger Latin population and European population, and the Caribbean, to play, soccer.
And you have a
In
significant
addition to
Middle Eastern population as well, right?
right, and we have an international studies center, that has attracted, a large Middle Eastern population, not nearly as large as it used to be, but certainly we consider ourselves, quite multicultural. And in fact, if you look at the blend of not only our students, but our faculty and staff as well, I'd say that, we've been doing that for a while.
So let's talk about the next question. I think it's above my pay grade here. Dr. Dillard, you have an MBA, is that right? From Clark, is that correct? Is it the MBA from Clark?
Actually, my MBA is from my one PWI educational experience. So I have an MBA from the Jack Massey School of Business at Belmont University in Nashville, Tennessee.
Okay, great. So you're perfectly qualified to answer this next question. I'm just reading it to you, and if you'll put it on the screen, it's talking about taking advantage of opportunity zone investments, and I think it's probably important for you to kind of to share this, because you mentioned to me in several conversations about the value of Shaw's property in downtown Raleigh and how you were trying to leverage that. So how do you take advantage of opportunity zone investments? What are they, and how does this help you hold on and leverage the property that you already have?
Oh, great question, Travis. And Shaw does sit in an opportunity zone. And it is one that the governor designated for the state, and so we exist in one. And Shaw commissioned a advisory panel through the Urban Land Institute a year ago to determine how we might leverage our location in an opportunity zone for the long-term benefit of the university. And I will say I have been in a number of meetings and discussions about how to leverage the opportunity zone investment. And so far, we've looked at a number of possibilities, and my board and I are trying to determine. We know from the investor side of the house, how they benefit, by the 10-year deferment of capital gains taxes by investing. But at the end of the day, it's still, a return on an investment in something that will live on once, the investor pulls their capital out of the venture. And so we have been very cautious about, creating something that will live beyond the 10 years or become such a lucrative investment from one of these opportunity zone funds that the funds stay in for the long-term benefit of an entity. And we've looked at things like being a 5G, 6G provider, for the southeastern part of our city. And so we are definitely deep into exploration of how we might benefit from the fact that we do sit in an opportunity zone. But there are people smarter than I that are still struggling with what does it really mean? And it was one of those pieces of legislation that was enacted, and then almost a year later, trying to make the rules on how it would work. And so there's still much to be figured out, but it is high on our radar screen. I know all about it. I know the funds that are available. And we've had many discussions. And and I'm very hopeful that we will be able to take advantage of the fact that we are in an opportunity zone.
Thank you for unpacking that and explaining that. One of the questions was about building coalitions, but I think you kind of answered the questions of building coalitions. I would ask it this way. In addition to the financial support, what other ways do you need alumni support? How can Shaw alums help you advance your vision? And then we'll have one final question, Dr. Dillard. You've been so fantastic tonight, but really, we really want to know, what can alumni do to support your vision?
The number one thing that alumni can do is do what you're doing, mm-hmm. telling the Shaw story. Mm-hmm. Because and sharing the experience that they had at Shaw. Mm-hmm. Because individuals, companies, etc., invest in people, mm-hmm. and they mm-hmm. invest in ideas and opportunities where they can make a significant difference. Mm-hmm. And so we have great alumni. Mm-hmm. They love Shaw. Mm-hmm. And they do, everything they can do from a financial perspective. Yes, mm-hmm. they could do more. Mm-hmm. And we, and each year we get a little bit better. Mm-hmm. But if you tell the Shaw story, mm-hmm. If you, come back and say, I'm going to mentor, or I'm going to support a student through Shaw that otherwise would fall through the cracks. Mm-hmm. Those are the kind of things that only alumni can do and do well. Mm-hmm. And I would tell you, Shaw's got great, mm-hmm. alumni. Mm-hmm. They when we call, they are there. They answer. When we say, I've got 5 students that are homeless. I've got 5 students who, are being evicted. I have students whose parents, are ill and they don't know what they're going to do. I will have a response within moments of the ask. And so I just tell my alums, everybody doesn't know the story.
Yes.
And you think because you had the experience, everybody knows about Shaw. Yes. But they don't, and you have to tell them, yes. About, the incredible story of Shaw University. And when I hear the incredible stories people tell about how Shaw made the difference, in their living experience, I am even more convinced, that Shaw will be here another 55 years, 155 years to keep making it.
Well, I want to accept the challenge. I'm going to ask our team if they could post in the chat. I posted during the earlier portion of Shaw Rising's film in the chat a link to a piece that I wrote called Why HBCUs Matter. And in that piece, I talked about growing up on Shaw's campus and all those who inspired me. And then there's a saying in the movie, that one of my favorite sayings by Reverend Dr. David Forbes, where he really says, no Shaw, no Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, or no SNCC, no Civil Rights Act, no Voting Rights Act, no Obama. And it's that spirit of social justice leadership that was permeated the Shaw campus that I ingested. And some people may say, oh, you're a Shaw graduate. Well, I'm a Bear, but I ended up going away from Raleigh and I came here to Baltimore to Morgan State University, or the Morgan State University. But it's all the family and the HBCU experiences that I've had. I share in the chat if they can post it for people to see. And I want to leave you with one final question. There may be parents watching. There may be students listening to you. There may be people who are curious, who never heard the HBCU story. And so I want you to explain to that parent or that student, hearing from the president of an HBCU, why an HBCU experience would be beneficial to a student trying to make a college decision. What would you say?
I would say this: there's a college for every student.
Mhm.
But if you've got a student, that is, that the school system that they attended from K through 12 was not, well resourced. If you know that in order for your student to be at the level to excel, then you want to put them in the environment where they will get that foundation and that nurturing, and not be in a position where they face their first failure. And that is the barrier that prevents them from ever completing their education. And so parents, your child. If your child is, can survive anywhere, and you've been able to make sure that they have, that great, foundation, they come to the HBCU to help even lift up that confidence, and get an opportunity to see people who look just like them, and have an opportunity that maybe they didn't have as they were going through K through 12. So what Shaw University provides is those that need a little bit more support, and foundational work in order to excel. We take those and we do what we have to do to get them up to par. If you have one that, has run up against a roadblock, and been knocked down, send them to Shaw, we can fix them. So we're in the business of, fixing those that may have been wounded, from having an experience where they weren't readily accepted.
Yeah.
And so the HBCU experience is there for a unique group of students,
Mm-hmm.
Who need to find a voice,
Mm-hmm.
Who needs to determine, can I really do this?
Mm-hmm.
Because many of our students suffer from imposter syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
They did well in this environment, but they're fearful that they can do well in any environment. And so HBCUs are uniquely able to provide a quality education. But we do that also, as I started with my initial comments, by also knowing the individual student.
Yes.
And being able to interface in a way that might not easily happen, at a larger or a PWI where they don't have those connections. And we believe that there's a university for everybody, but Shaw is special.
And let me just say this, and I want you to have the last word here to finish your thoughts. But there are a lot of honor students and AP students, as we have discussed over the years. My daughter was one, I was one, who were in many times hostile environments as one of 2 or 3 in AP courses. And that kind of does something to you when you are in a hostile environment. I was one of the first students bused in Wake County. My uncle was Shaw grad, Shaw Board of Trustees, who helped to integrate the public schools. And so when I was bused from Southeast Raleigh to another part of town, I didn't think that the school I was going to was adding anything to me. I thought I was bringing some pepper to the environment, and it needed it. But when you're in that environment over a 12-year period, it can be a little bit traumatic. So coming home to an HBCU also reinforces that you're in a safe space to be who you are. And so,
Exactly.
final words, Dr. Dillard, about the HBCU experience. These people have been hanging on to your words. I thank you for all of your time. I want to give you another 30 seconds just to say goodbye, say the last appeal you could make as the president of the great Shaw University.
I would say this, HBCUs are a vital part of the fabric of our nation. And when we think about doctors and nurses and this pandemic and judges and politicians, please know that the majority of those are educated at HBCUs. And so don't buy into your child cannot have a quality education at an HBCU because although we make up 9% of four-year schools, we graduate 24% of Black undergraduates. We award 26% of all Black baccalaureate degrees and 32% of STEM degrees that are earned by Black students are earned at HBCUs. And they go on to work anywhere that they have the desire to work. And young women, 46% of Black women who earn STEM degrees earn them. They graduate from HBCUs. So, we got the track record. We're turning them out. Vice President-elect Kamala Harris is an example. So, I'm telling you, take a look. We have the track record. We've been turning out success stories for as long as we have been in existence. And for Shaw, that's 155 years. Thank you for this opportunity to tell the Shaw story.
And happy birthday, Shaw University. I want to thank you, Dr. Dillard. I want to thank all of our special participants tonight. I want to thank the MPT events team, the outreach team, the entire MPT family, the entire Shaw University family. Happy anniversary. Happy birthday, Shaw University. Thank you all so much for tuning in and supporting HBCU Week in Maryland and in the nation. And have a very wonderful and great evening. Good night.